Hi guys, so I want to talk today about mental health, the great buzzword of our time. It's been coming up a lot lately, TV shows, the internet, everywhere. And I think by and large that's a pretty good thing. Like, a lot of people are talking about this stuff that maybe otherwise wouldn't talk about it, and it can be maybe easy to look down your nose at some of it as being a bit sort of superficial or whatever else, but I think overall, yeah, it is a really good thing. I think there's just been a general kind of increasing acceptance of these kind of things, of these kind of topics, and you know, there's people talking about depression and anxiety and things like that who probably never would have done in the past, and that's great, you know. You see that shift, like obviously, like The Sopranos, they kind of show that shift happening almost like in real time in that show, and you see it in like rap and stuff like that, and various other sort of corners or avenues of culture, even like boxers and stuff like Tyson Fury, you know, yeah, I think that's really good. But it does have the potential to just be a kind of buzzword, you know, like a sort of hollow sentiment, like mental health. People just keep saying it, and some people, I think that saying it is enough somehow. If we just keep saying the phrase mental health, we'll like solve all these problems. But I think so many of these problems come down to how we structure ourselves, and like quite fundamental aspects of not just who we are but how we live, and without changing those or seriously examining those, I don't really see how the problem will improve. There's a lot of people taking their own lives at the moment, and I think it deserves a bit more detail than it's getting. And I think sometimes the conversations can be a bit sort of like kind of like nicey nice, you know, don't know how to phrase it, but like people don't really want to speak the truth, they don't want to be harsh or honest sometimes, and they just want to say, oh, you know, we didn't know this person was suffering. If he was suffering, I wish he knew he could have reached out. If you're suffering, please reach out, please tell someone. And you know, it's all valid and true and good, but probably just not quite enough really to promote wide scale change. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously a lot of like aspects of the way we live now in modern society are quite unhealthy, like you know, we're all pretty aware of like what the internet, or we're aware of some of the extent of what like the internet seems to be doing to us, and you know, being on our phones constantly, and being away from nature a lot, being indoors all day, now working remotely all the time, and living quite sedentary lifestyles and stuff, and you know, yeah, it's some of that goes without saying. I mean, to be fair, I'm out in nature right now, I'm not living a sedentary lifestyle. I can still get pretty depressed at times, although things are good now, but you know, that's there are some obvious, you know, things like that. I think some of the aspects we're probably less willing to address come down to our willingness to actually talk to people and listen to people and to give them our time, and also our willingness or lack of willingness or ability to kind of look at people without judging them, because it's very hard to not judge people, it's very hard to not compare yourself to people, it's very hard to not be critical of people. I think there are very few of us who are like zen enough or fucking open-minded enough or good-hearted enough to to really not judge people, and to really not look down our noses at them, or to, like, it's just a fact, it's just a reality of life. If someone is, your best friend or a very close family member, someone you really love, then these things probably don't apply for the most part. But if that's the case, it's possible that you don't really need encouragement to talk to them anyway. You probably already know that you can talk to these people if you're having problems. But I think people who are in our kind of second tier of people in our lives, people who we do know quite well, but maybe not that well, but maybe people we have to interact with on quite a regular basis, people who are around regularly as a result of our jobs or our hobbies or our education or whatever else, it can be harder to communicate with those people in an honest way. And that's a shame, because we spend a lot of time around those people. But we live in such a, even though I think a lot of the time we're not honest about this, in just like such a status obsessed society that, like, people in workplaces, for example, they all judge and compare one another. People talk about each other behind their backs. People assess one another's lives. People compare their own lives. People get jealous, or people look down on people, or whatever it may be. A lot of our sort of social inclinations are not that well suited to making those around us feel better. If you, for example, say to people, let's say you're a man, right, and you have like a group of friends, and you, instead of doing what a lot of people do, I guess, and lying about your life and making it seem better than it is, and pretending that things are going well for you, pretending that you're having an easy time, that your new business is going well, that women like you, that you're not lonely, that you're happy with how things are, that you feel good about yourself, that you've got high self-esteem and confidence. Imagine, instead of lying about those things, as most people do to some extent, if you told those people, like, no, I feel like shit, I feel like I'm a loser, I feel terrible about myself, I feel like I'm like bad, I feel like no one likes me, I've got this problem with my family life, and I can't manage this, and I can't deal with that, and this thing I'm doing is failing, and I feel like shit, and I don't like who I am, and blah blah blah. You say those things to people. On the surface, they may be sympathetic. They almost definitely will be, and they will probably offer to help even. But at the same time, your position on the kind of social ladder has probably just dropped considerably. And I'm not saying that's right, or that that's the way it should be, but that is kind of the way it is, really. You will, in most social environments, again, unless these are people who you truly love and who truly love and understand you, then you probably will be seen as somewhat of a loser, or someone who's a figure of pity. And like most men, for example, and I do think this is a big part of the problem as it relates to men, is like most men don't want pity. The feeling of that is awful. For people to feel sorry for you, it feels like a personal failure. It feels terrible to have sympathy from others. It depends what kind of sympathy we're talking about. But for people to look at you and think, oh, poor guy, he's a fucking loser. Like, no one wants that. It's not a kind of sympathy you want. So I think there's a bit of an issue there. And I mean, for example, with dating, right? Like, again, I think this I don't really like that these things are often separated. by gender when we're discussing. There's a lot of talk about like men's mental health lately. I do think it's kind of like everybody's problem, but this aspect, I guess, when it comes to dating and things like that, probably relates more specifically to men. Like, you kind of have to pretend that everything's great, you know, like most of the time, realistically. Like, you kind of have to give off the impression that you're doing well in life, that you're happy, that people like you, that you're confident, that you have high self-esteem. You do as a woman as well. But I think, to be fair, like, these days people are more likely to overlook a lack of these things if you're a woman than they are if you're a man, but it applies to both. But yeah, I think like it's by and large it would be considered very unattractive for you to be honest about who you are and how you feel and your place in life. And that's a shame, because most people, like a lot of people, have a lot in common with people, but we don't really convey ourselves accurately through fear of being judged, and it prevents us from relating to one another. And it's difficult in your daily life to be yourself in that regard. And if it's difficult in your daily life, then it becomes difficult in your mind. And if it's difficult in your mind, it becomes difficult even in your sort of intimate inner circle with people who you really know and trust. Because I think some people, they get so caught up in the lying and the pretending that they forget who they even really are and how they even really feel, and they bury a lot of that stuff because even in themselves they don't want to be that person who's like a loser or who feels terrible about themselves, or who, you know, they don't want to be that. So I think in that regard there's a pretty big issue. It's obviously exacerbated by social media and stuff. It's people are heavily incentivized to kind of not do that, I guess, in certain respects, to not talk about those things, to not mention them to anybody. And I think there are ways that can change, but I think in a way, to have the confidence and the sense of self to talk about the thing, like social media, right? There's a lot of people talking about their successes, and you know, that's cool. Like, I understand that's positive, that's inspiring a lot of the time, whatever else. But generally, you're only supposed to post on there about good stuff that's happening to you, good stuff you think. It's a general rule. It's not true across the board. A lot of people do complain and stuff on there, but in a sense, you sort of, I feel sometimes like we almost have that backwards. Like, the stuff that's going well, the stuff that's good, you don't really need to discuss. You don't really need to tell people necessarily. You just crack on with it, you know, enjoy it. It's going well, keep going. Don't worry about, you know, what other people think of it, or what you know, speaking about it, telling people. Stuff that's going badly, ways in which you feel life is not working out for you, those are probably more important to talk about. But we see a lot less of that. It has more of a practical benefit, you know, talking about those things, potentially. And it, you know, when you go on there, it does give the illusion, when you look around you, when you look online, it gives the illusion that everybody, oh cool, fucking red screen, nice. Still a bit of a novelty to me to see these here, because they were wiped out in England. It gives you this illusion that everyone's doing better than you, that everyone's more confident, and that everyone's, and you know, you can see through that with time. You get used to it, and you see through the bullshit, and you can see that most people in some ways are pretty sad, you know, and that, like, the way if they are presenting everything as amazing on social media, probably all the more reason why it isn't necessarily that amazing if they feel the need to. Who knows? But sorry, I'm losing my train of thought a little bit. But yeah, I think that is a way in which we could change both online and offline is really valuing in a sincere way the honesty and integrity it takes for people to be real about what they're going through, and to look at these problems people are having and to consider like how easily you yourself could be having the same problem, and how it's not necessarily a weakness in that person, or if it is a weakness, well, it's a weakness that's relatable to your own. I think there's a shift there that perhaps we're already making, but I definitely think it's important to make. Otherwise, we will just continue this cycle of like everybody pretending everything is good all the time until the day that everyone realises, it's not. Yeah. Another thing is people will often say, get professional help. Or for example, there was a clip of Paddy Pimblett, the UFC fighter, and he gave a good speech. His friend killed himself shortly before a fight, and it was very sad, and there's a lot of genuine emotion in his words about it, and it was nice. But he said one thing in it that stuck out to me. He said no one does anything about it. He said, it's getting worse and worse and no one does anything about it. And I kind of, from his tone, maybe wrongly, I don't know, but I interpreted that to mean like the system or the government don't do anything about it. And that is what a lot of the discourse is about. It's like, the state needs to do more. And I'm not even saying that's not true. Maybe they do. But do we really want to live in a world where we outsource all of our sort of personal problems and how we deal with those to the state, where we're reliant on a sort of taxpayer-funded service to help us with something that perhaps should just be kind of an innate part of our society, like something that we should do amongst one another. It should be part of our communities. Like, it should be something that we just help one another with, without someone needing to be paid an inordinate sum of money and other people needing to be on waiting lists for years. And to be fair, the rate things are going, it seems like most people need someone to talk to, some kind of mental health support, and it's not possible. I do think, to be fair, when I talked in my last video about automation and work and stuff, I do think one of the side effects of that will be that a lot more people will become therapists and counsellors and things like that, and there'll be a greater need for it. And we're seeing that already with all the online therapy and stuff that's happening. And that's cool, if that stuff becomes more readily available. But yeah, I don't know if it's something we want to be dependent on as a culture, like to have to pay for that, to have to pay for something that probably should just be fundamental to our lives and to our kind of relationships with one another. And I think that speaks to the next problem, which is like time, and kind of time feeling like money, and us not having that much time for each other. It's, if someone says to you, for example, if you're suffering, someone says to you, look, anytime things are bad, just give me a call. Look, some of those people are fucking saints, and they mean that. But I think a lot of people are probably not really in tune with the reality of what that means. Like, imagine you know, you're a miserable person, your life is a mess, you're completely fucked up, and you've got someone's phone number, they've got a job, they've got a family, they've got kids, whatever, you know, they've got their aspirations, they've got prior commitments, you know, and you're ringing them up 3 or 4 times a week because you're so unhappy, you're so depressed, you can't stop crying. You're ringing them up 3 or 4 times a week, they're with their family, you know, their wife's got problems of her own, they've got problems of their own, they're trying to deal with their shit. They've got you phoning them all the time, or, you know, like, it's not going to work, really. It's assuming you know things are that bad. It's just too much. It feels like too much to ask of another person, and I do wonder if part of that is because we've become so detached and kind of disconnected from each other in some ways, and we're living in like massive communities where to some extent we're not really living together, we're not really taking part in life as a unit, we're kind of all separate, there's way too many of us squashed together, and we're sort of all quite individualistic and doing our own thing, and a lot of the time we're sort of separated from our family units, friendship has become quite a transactional kind of cheapened thing, that is often only as strong as the sort of social value it provides for the people partaking in it. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the solution is. I know, for example, that I have time for, like, you know, my family members when they have problems and stuff. I can make time for them, like, easily. I don't think I could make time for too many more people than that, and I think therein lies the problem to some degree, is that, like, sorry, I'm not explaining all of this well because I'm thinking out loud. I've tried to do this video a few times but I find it difficult to explain, but like, it shouldn't necessarily be something that we need to find time for. It should be something that is naturally taken care of as just part of how we function as a group and as a community, and people probably shouldn't feel like they have to reach out across the void, you know, to get in touch with someone. They should probably just be in touch with a number of people who are close to them in their lives anyway, and perhaps if we weren't spending as much time on kind of trivial social relationships and social activity and stuff, that might be the case. We might only devote that time to sort of meaningful relationships and interactions, and we would inevitably deal with a lot of these problems and end up feeling a lot better about them and feeling, you know, closer to people around us. But at the moment it does feel like people have to, you know, as they say, like, reach out, and that implies distance, and I think that distance is just there between so many of us, and again, maybe that distance is there because it should be. That people we shouldn't be that close with, that people we're not that close with, people we don't have the potential to be that close with, well then in that case, like, maybe they aren't the people we should be reaching out to in the first place, and if that's not the case, then we shouldn't need to reach out in the first place, because we should just be more together. I think the way we live is like separating us more and more, and it's a shame. And I think that, and the status aspect of all this, and, you know, not wanting to look bad in relation to others, not wanting to see yourself in a negative light compared to others, I think they go hand in hand, really, those two components of the problem, and again do come down to how we live, how we operate as a society. And a lot of people, I think, are willing to, as I said, just say the phrase mental health, but they're not removing themselves from the kind of like social rat race. They're not, for example, most of those people who talk about that, they I mean, you can see the double standard, like I mentioned earlier, you know, when it comes to like dating, for example. Imagine if everybody put on their dating profiles like how they really feel about themselves and their lives, or well, if everybody did it, then it wouldn't be an issue because everyone would be doing it, so it would be good. But if you did, if someone did, you know, imagine how negatively that would impact their chances of success, you know, because we often don't look at people based on merit. We don't look at them based on like, oh, you know, this person is seemingly very smart and has integrity and is a good person and has the potential to do a lot of good things, has the potential to do a lot of, you know, a lot of good things with their life and blah blah blah. And it's no, we generally, like, people are kind of assessed more on like, what do they have, what do they possess now, what can they convey just through sort of confidence, and where are they on the social ladder, where do they rank compared to me. And so to actually be honest about yourself would be a kind of devastating blow to your social ranking, your social positioning, your chances of meeting someone, your chances of having friends. Yeah, I don't know, I find this hard to explain. Normally I wouldn't, I would just stop this video and try and do it again and explain things more clearly, in a more concise way, sort of ramble on like less, but I've tried talking about it a few times and I find it difficult to gather all my thoughts on it and to be sort of concise and to explain it clearly, because I guess to some extent I'm not really proposing like full, real, tangible solutions. I'm just kind of describing the problem, but I don't want to just like mindlessly criticise something that is by and large probably quite good. But yeah, anyway, cool. So yeah, that's all really. Hope you guys are well. Take care. Alright, so to sum up and sort of clarify, because I wasn't able to fully explain myself yesterday. I think when it comes to admitting mental health problems, I don't think the problem is so much in admitting it. I think the problem is in admitting the cause. So like, for example, if you're a millionaire CEO, get away from these fucking wasps, and you're like, you know, I'm a millionaire CEO and even I get depressed. People are just probably going to be like, oh wow, that's, you know, well done to you for being depressed and still being a millionaire CEO. You know, it's impressive that you've managed to do all of these things, because you're a person of high status. But what if you're like, I'm depressed because I've got a fucking micro penis and women find it repulsive, and I can't hold down a relationship because I haven't got the social skills and I don't know how to communicate, and you know, all my businesses have failed, and you know, my fucking parents are ashamed of me, and you know, my family don't want anything to do with me, and this and that, and you have to admit all these personal failings. I think that's where the problem is when it relates to status. It's not an issue. The issue isn't merely about saying, you know, I'm depressed. Most people these days are not going to judge you for that, but the cause of your depression, or for example, just, you know, I have no friends, or I think a lot of people are just fucking lonely and that's why they kill themselves, or why they get depressed. come on, Luna, hurry up. Those things are much harder to admit, as I mentioned in the earlier video, you know. Loneliness kind of begets loneliness. Like, people typically don't want to be friends with someone that doesn't have any friends. Women typically don't want to date men that women don't want to date. Do you know what I mean? These things are kind of self-perpetuating, and that is a key part of why they're so difficult for people to communicate, I think. And the other thing about not being able to communicate easily, or people not having the time, I think the issue with that again is like, yeah, you know, close friends and family, assuming they're decent people, they will have the time for it. They might not have the best skills, you know, to help, but they will probably have time if you're miserable. But I think the problem is that actually, and what I didn't really explain clearly is like, we spend actually a very large portion of our time on relationships that aren't that close, on kind of secondary or tertiary social relationships that don't have that same level of understanding or closeness, and that basically means we're surrounded by people who shouldn't really care, who shouldn't really put the time in, because they've got their own problems and their own inner circle, and everything is kind of fragmented. And people these days, I need to fucking glue this thing, it's shaking around like crazy. People these days, also, I don't know if you can hear this guy beeping in the distance, it's driving me fucking insane, man. I had to wait like 2 or 3 minutes to do the video because I was down there, and he's just like beep, beep. It drives me mad when people do that. Like, they're waiting for someone to come out, and instead of getting out of the car, they just fucking honk like a psycho. But anyway, yeah, I mean, a lot of people, for example, will I think personally these days will sort of abandon meaningful social relationships in the pursuit of sort of increased like status or something like that. So in effect they sort of give up something potentially very valuable. And be nice, Luna. Hola. Give up something potentially very valuable in pursuit of achieving sort of social status. I've seen this, I mean, well, I've experienced it in my own life, definitely, but I've seen it as well in other people. You know, there'll be people, they'll have sort of close friends who they've known for years, but who maybe don't see them as having that much social value, so they kind of flit in and out of their lives depending on how lonely they are, or whether or not they've got problems going on that their new friends might not understand or care about. And usually the end result is that person who they sort of did a bit of a disappearing act on doesn't really want any, Luna, come on, doesn't really want anything to do with them, doesn't really care about their problems, you know. I've seen this happen to someone very recently, and it's a common trend, I think. Yeah, it's a common kind of. I'm fucking distracted again. What are you looking at down there, Luna? What is it? Yeah, I don't know. It seems to be a common occurrence, and people forget the type of environment they might need around them further down the line. People who you're friends with, who you might find boring or annoying or whatever, but who are very close friends in some sense, or who understand you or know you well, or who've known you for a long time. The value of those people often doesn't present itself over the short term, so it can be hard to see it, and you can think, why the fuck am I spending time with this person who's a dick? And then you get to 20 years down the line and you know, you get seriously ill or something and you realise you don't really have any close friends because we're all kind of swapping and choosing and kind of whatever, you know, so much with our lives, whether it's dating or socialising. There's not probably quite as much loyalty as there was, and I think that makes a lot of people very lonely, not just the people who are sort of ditched as a result of it, but also the people who are doing that, because they frequently don't really realise what they're doing, and then suddenly they become one of these saddos who's, you know, the honeymoon period is over and they're a sort of 40-year-old loser and no one really knows them. No one really has any interest in hearing about their shit. So yeah, I don't know. I think as I said, a lot of it is about structural things like that, how we structure ourselves, and that can change for sure, but I don't know if it will ever be easy with certain things. I don't know if it will ever be easy to admit. I saw a video a while ago, it was really fucking sad. It was from some sort of suicide charity or something, and it was a video of people. This was like, it said this is a compilation of video clips of the last videos of people before they killed themselves, and all the videos with them just having fun. They were smiling. It was like doing silly games and stuff. It was fucking brutal, because if you didn't have that caption, you'd have no idea that's what those videos were. It's just people having fun and smiling and doing stupid jokes with their mates and stuff, or with their family or whoever. And they all killed themselves shortly after filming those videos. And I think that speaks to it a little bit, like people not wanting to admit the shit that they've got going on. And I don't know, I guess there's a lot of reasons for that, and perhaps part of the reason I feel I can't explain myself properly in this is because it's not something I can really explain, you know. It's too complicated and too big and it's too much, and it's not something I've probably thought about enough yet, but I do have some thoughts on it, and try to convey those. I really need to fix this fucking thing. Every time I buy one of these fucking selfie sticks, it fucks up and starts shaking around. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, those are my thoughts and feelings. I hope you guys are all doing well, and take care. Bye.